Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good everything. My name is Jason Weiss. You are here with me on our bi-weekly Ask Jason Weiss show. As you know, I am an attorney. However, nothing being said today is legal advice. I am not your attorney. I am not giving you legal advice, and nothing that I say should you rely upon as any type of legal advice. There is no attorney-client privilege. Also, should you seek legal advice or financial advice, you should consult an attorney directly. Today, I have the pleasure of having two wonderful gentlemen who are Gators like myself, who are in a space called NIL. And I'm sure for anybody that has watched football, college football, or done anything in the sports world, you have heard about you've heard about NIL. So what is NIL? Well, I will let these guys explain to you after they give us a quick, brief background on each of them, what NIL is, and then we'll talk about how they got pulled into the NIL world and where they think it's going. So I have with me Brett and Garrett. They are both seniors, right? Seniors at the University of Florida. So entrepreneurs at a great school. And they are going to be taking over the NIL world by storm. So let's start with, we'll go in alphabetical order through first name. So we'll start with Brett. Brett, just tell us 20 seconds about yourself. And then I'm going to cut you off, and then we'll go to Garrett, and then I have my first question for you. So ready, set, you're on the clock. Go.
Awesome. My name is Brett Unger. I'm a senior journalism major at the University of Florida. Let's see. I've been involved in ESPN Gainesville, which I did a lot of reporting in live sports games, high school and college especially, and learned a lot of communications and writing and reading expertise through my journalism major.
I like it. That was 22 seconds, but we'll give you that. All right, Garrett, you only get 18 seconds.
I'll try to be a little quicker then.
No, Garrett, you're good. Go ahead.
My name is Garrett Schreiber. I'm also a senior here at the University of Florida. I'm a sports management major. So for my full 4 years here, I've been studying all things sports, the sports industry, how it operates and how to work in it. I work at various sports management firms, one of them being out in LA managing boxers. So I have a few experiences in the field of sports management, and sports is my passion. I want to find a way to work in it, and I'm trying to do it on my own.
And these guys are young, aggressive in a good way, and ready to take the world by storm. And all we hear about in sports these days is NIL and money and all of that. So one of you, please go ahead. What does NIL stand for? And give a quick summary of what the NIL is.
Okay, so NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. I believe it was in 2021 where college athletes began to be able to profit off of what they call their NIL, or the name, image, and likeness. So through this, and obviously every school, every athlete, every sport has different value based on what people think. But through their name, image, and likeness, they are able to basically brand themselves or get a brand deal with a company, and they're able to profit off their NIL, as they say.
Now, I'll ask you a question as a former and hopefully returning sports law professor, and I also taught sports law for management students. Do you know how the whole NIL came about, and where it all came from and where it stemmed from?
Yeah, I mean, I've studied it a few times in my sports laws class here at UF. It's a really interesting way of how it came about that the Supreme Court ruled that, athletes, very unanimous decision that athletes it's a for-profit sport. The universities are making profit off of it, and the athletes have the right, if their names are being used to promote the teams and the universities, that they have a right to be making money off their own name that's being used. So it's a really cool thing. It really shook up the sports world that we know it. I think that it's still in the process of the shakeup, that people are still trying to find their footing. And even though there's establishments already kind of starting up and getting some footing, it's definitely not the end of the changes that are occurring. And there's definitely a lot of moving pieces that I don't really think anyone knows where it's going.
Now, are you talking about the House versus the NCAA case?
Yeah, I'm referring about that. I'm referring about NIL in general. I'm talking about how there's calls for athletes to get compensated by the universities directly. So in all aspects of NIL, whether that's legally, whether that's with agencies or other brand deals, is that it's a very moving, changing, developing thing in our society and sports right now, that anyone who claims that they know what's going to happen is lying to themselves.
Correct. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, some of the universities and the programs don't even know where they are. So the case that we're talking about is the House case. And the House case, basically, it was the big five that were involved. The SEC and the ACC and a couple of the others. Those are the big five that are really involved. But some of the stuff is great, right? Athletes can now get paid for their name, their image, their likeness. So like when we used to have the EA Sports College edition, and Tim Tebow, I think, was on the cover one year. He didn't get paid for that, right? University of Florida made a ton of money, but Tebow didn't get anything from it. Now, if they happen to use, one of the quarterbacks or somebody out there, the school's going to make money. The athlete's going to make money. Everybody's going to be allowed to make money. It's also in a lot of sports expanded the rosters for the team. But the problem is it's going to hurt walk-ons. We're not going to have those walk-on athletes anymore. So I can talk about lacrosse, right? Lacrosse, most schools had a roster of anywhere from 51 to 60 athletes that could be on their active roster. Well, if a team now participates in the House decision, lacrosse is now down to 48. And all 48 athletes are eligible for some sort of scholarship. Yeah, it's not saying it's a full ride. It's not saying whatever it is, but all 48 athletes can get a scholarship. But there's not a room for a 49th player. And that's the problem. So there are schools out there currently that are fine for 2024 because it doesn't go into effect for the 2024-2025 season. But for 25-26, they've got to shed roster spots.
Yeah.
And those are going to be hard calls from we're opting in on the NIL and sorry, you're no longer on the team.
Yeah.
What do you do, right? You got kids that are committed to the school, and it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
So although it's good for these players that are making money and doing all this stuff, the average kid, I'm going to say kid, or the average student, they're not getting the opportunity to do a walk-on anymore. So you won't have it Rudy anymore.
Yeah.
You won't have, some of these players that maybe went there as like a preferred walk. Nope, no such thing. Now, not every school needs to opt in to it, and most schools have not even announced if they're going to do it. They're not going to come out and announce it, I think, until like March or April of 2025, and that's basically what cutoff is. So the good is you got an athlete who does something and their picture is used, they're going to get paid. But the bad thing is you're now limiting athletes. Just think about it. At least 3 players from every Division I lacrosse program has to be cut.
Yep.
And
it's like as they're saying, there's a lot of positives that come with it and with it being adopted. And then there's also the drawbacks that maybe they didn't really realize what was going to happen when it did in the first place. And I think they're starting to show, and they're going to continue to show until some serious changes are made regarding NIL and stuff. But as of right now, it's like I said, no one knows what's going to happen, especially with changes such as that.
Yeah, and look, all over the place. I admit I didn't watch a ton of baseball this season, and I started watching some of the playoff, and I see the players now they had advertising on their helmets, like unheard of. So anybody that says, yeah, I love sports, remember, like, sports is a business. It's not just a game anymore, right? And think about it. I know you guys are younger, so you don't have kids of your own. But look, kids are starting in 4th grade, 5th grade. They're playing sports, and their parents are already saying, all right, you got to do this, and you got to make this team, because otherwise, Michigan won't look at you, and Ohio State won't look at you. Like, parents are starting these things, and I'm guilty of it personally. 5th grade, 6th grade, like, you're in middle school, and it's like, man, you didn't make the middle school team. There goes Ohio State. Like, what? Yeah. What? It is crazy. And that's where NIL comes in, right? So let me ask you this: how does the NIL stuff that you guys are working on? Where do you go? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you see the NIL evolving, and how are you staying either up to date or ahead of the curve?
Sure. So,
who's got this one?
I can go on this one. So, I mean, I think that NIL is going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to change into ways that people don't really understand right now. And I think when it started, and what it's kind of still in right now, but slowly getting out of, is the collectives. So the main collectives are started. They're separate companies, but they work directly with the school, with each individual school. Most schools have one where local companies and stuff that want to get involved with helping out put their money into one collective, which is then dispersed among the athletes at the schools. What we're starting to see is that there's a lot of deals and NIL deals going with athletes that are away from the collective. So companies that aren't involved, national, regional companies, are now going directly to the athletes. While this is a good thing, it adds another aspect of a responsibility for student athletes. So instead of focusing on school and athletics as their main two things, they're now taking in this business aspect. And while that's good, they're going to have, it's too much for a student athlete to do. And what is going to happen is that their academics are going to start going down because they're too worried about keeping up the level that they need to on the field, while also profiting as much as they can and capitalizing on their NIL. So we came in and we want to help them, take that responsibility of managing these profits and capitalizing away from them so that they can focus on their athletics and getting to that next level, while also having time to be able to get their degrees, to be able to graduate on time, and to be able to explore the next path, whether that's through athletics or in a different field. But we want to help them manage their capital, manage their ability to get NIL deals so that they don't have to worry about that. It's a very, very difficult thing, especially without having years of experience to look back on and say, hey, this is the correct way to do it. Because this is only so new. It's very young, so that no one really knows, hey, this is the right way to do it.
Correct. Like in the legal field, we would call it precedent, right? There really is no precedent on this. And we're living this and we're changing this. And hopefully, guys like you can go ahead and help mold it, right? So, there's situations that happen all the time, right? What do you need the NIL money for? Is it to go towards your tuition? Is it to help you buy a car? Is it to, help you do whatever? So I guess that's the next question, let's say you're working with an athlete and you get the athlete an NIL deal. What happens to that money? Is it used for school? Is it used for whatever? Like, all right, you got an NIL deal, and let's call it a product. Let's call it widget company, right? So widget company is interested in your athlete. Now what?
Well, that's kind of what we're involved or trying to get involved in helping them with. Something I wanted to touch on is, I don't remember the exact coach who said it. It might have been Saban or Kiffin. One of you intervene if you know. But someone made a quote the other day or this past week that like the NIL landscape pretty much, in their opinion, is getting like almost too I don't know if they said too involved, but very involved with the recruiting process. And as we've seen, plenty of athletes, including some very notable quarterbacks across the nation, have committed somewhere because of what a school promises them, or decommitted because a school or someone else affiliated with a deal couldn't hold through with the promise. So obviously, with that information, it's pretty clear and evident that these athletes, I'm sure the stories that we see of those quarterbacks aren't the only ones who are dealing with money issues, money concerns. So one of our goals is to help them with this, as it's very clear that across the nation, it is a huge topic and a huge, I don't want to say issue, but concern for people dealing with their money.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're getting it. You're hearing it all the time, when I was back in college and all this, you would see some of the athletes that came from, less affluent neighborhoods and barely could afford it. And they were getting, full rides. And that's the way it should be, right? You shouldn't have been prevented from going to your school just because your family doesn't have means. I mean, schools are still doing that now, right? Schools will give you a complete and total need base, right? If your family needs $40,000 a year, they're going to give you $40,000 a year to go to tuition. But you would see the athletes driving around campus in Hummers at the time, or Trans Ams, or Camaros, or these nice cars, and they couldn't afford it. Boosters bought that car. Boosters lent them the car. They rented it. They did things like that. They would fly them private places. They would go things. So the athletes were getting things, but it wasn't like, here's cash. Here's something. And I think part of the huge part, and you guys, if I say, the internet, not the internet, but the Instagram sensation, the twins who play hoops at the University of Miami, everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? So they got some sort of deal, and, they're all over the place, and they're making tons of money. I think they're the top 5 in grossing, behind maybe Livy Dunn, who's number 1, maybe. I mean, it's that. And, so now you have Livy Dunn. I think she has a commercial for pet food, right? Her dog, Nutrigrow or whatever. She makes that money. Now, yes, her agent, her talent, her whatever, she takes a piece, management fee, whatever it is, that's allowed. But in the olden days, the second she took $1, she was no longer eligible to do gymnastics, because no collegiate player that has eligibility was allowed to take any type of money.
Yeah.
And when I taught in sports law, it used to be like, even if an agent comes up to you in the airport and says, "Oh, let me buy that soda for you," that was an NCAA violation. You could lose your eligibility over picking up somebody's soda because they didn't have cash.
Correct.
Correct. And now it's the opposite, right? It's hey, let me pick that.
It is crazy how much it's changed, and it's really taken a full 180 and completely became a completely different ballgame.
Right. I mean, look, when I taught sports law before the NIL rule came into effect and all of that, my philosophy was always this: the athletes are getting paid, right? How are the athletes getting paid? They're going to school for free. They got room and board. They get some transportation. They get a phenomenal education. So there's a value to that, right? So let's just say University of Florida, it's $20,000 a year to go there for out of state, or 25, whatever it is. So 4 years at UF, that's $100,000. And then your housing and your lodging and your food and all this, you're making $150,000 as an athlete. So, and that's why they were able to take your name, image, and likeness rights and do that. So they could do that. Now, not only are they still going for free and they're still getting all the perks, but now they could go ahead and they can get their own deals, and school and the boosters are helping get those deals.
Correct.
A local car agency. There was a Ford dealership there in Gainesville. I forgot, maybe Gainesville Ford. Okay. So now the quarterback is driving around in a brand new Ford Raptor, and it's allowed.
Yeah.
It's allowed.
It's very, very different. And I think that it scares a lot of people because of how different it is and how it used to be. And I think that's something that people draws people away. It kind of makes them not like it just because it is different. The way I see it, and I think Brett can agree with me, is that just because it's different doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. Yes, there's changes. How I feel is that, listen, if you are able to, if you're being used by the university, put out to do press conferences, you're the reason that there's a big draw on tickets. You have every right to go out and make a name for yourself and earn your share.
And I agree with you 100%, but I want to take that one step further. And what we're going to do is we're going to break real quick for a commercial. And when we come back, remember exactly what you said, that if the university is putting you out there and the university is getting notoriety, you should be compensated for that as an athlete. I want to touch on that and dive deep into that statement when we get back from a commercial. So we're going to run for a quick 30-second commercial. Everybody stay tight. We'll be back with Brett and Garrett, and we're going to be talking NIL for everybody, and we will be right back. So everybody stay tuned. I'm coming. I apologize. I had to grab the door, and I am back. So you are back at the Ask Jason Weiss show. I apologize. I had to grab the door, but here I am. Again, I am an attorney. Nothing that I talk about today is attorney-client privilege. You have not hired me, and I am not your lawyer. And if you need legal advice, contact an attorney and hire him or her. So we were talking about that if a school puts an athlete out there, or a student athlete, and the school is benefiting from that, you have to go to press conferences, you have to do all this, you have to do all that, the athlete should be paid. So I guess my first question is, if the athlete is there, let's say on a scholarship, is the athlete already getting paid? Is that part of their deal with the school, where it's, look, we're going to use UF because that's where you guys go. You go to the University of Florida, you're playing on the football team, and part of the responsibility is that if you have a great game, the press might want to interview you, and you need to show up, and you got to wear Nike products because they're a Nike school, still a Nike school, I think, right?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah.
No, you got to wear stuff. You can't wear other things. You can't do that. And that's what you're getting for a 4-year education, right? So I get that. So I'm curious, what is your thought on that? Should the players have to be paid in order to do that, or are they getting paid for the other things?
Yeah, so what I was touching on earlier, and I'll let Brett go. I don't want to talk over him too much. But what I was getting on earlier is that
he's used to it.
Is that like you said, they are being compensated in a sense, right? They're getting a great education. They're getting put up in student housing, at least for the first year. They're getting their meals paid for. And they're, like you said, they're wearing the Nike clothes from the deals that the corporate sponsorships have with the university. And I think that it's not unfair to say that there are different valuations for different positions and different caliber of player on each football team. And that's in every sport as well. And the players that are put out, so when we do the SEC conferences in the beginning of the season, when we have the face of the Instagram post, when we have the face of on the broadcast, when they have the players line up, that there are players that are used to market the program. And there are players that are used that aren't used as much. And the players that are there and then kind of the front men of the program are a different value than others in the marketing sense. I'm not talking about like playing ability and what they give to the team. But from a marketing standpoint, there are players that are just used more and bring more fans to the stadium. If you have a high caliber player, you want to market them, and that's what's going to draw the fans in. So there's different levels to what these players should be making, and just doing a broad compensation in the form of an education for every single player is unfair to the players that are being the faces of the organization.
And to add on to that, I don't know if this was the exact question at hand here, but in terms of compensation, like additional compensation, like Garrett said, take Shedeur Sanders, for example. Obviously, Dion had a huge part in putting that program on the map. To my understanding, there haven't been any type of program, any type of notable program like ever. Am I wrong about that? At least in my lifetime. Anyways, players like Shedeur and Travis Hunter, who I believe are I could be wrong about this, but I believe are 1 and 3 in NIL value right now.
For football, yeah.
When they're bringing in the value of a school, pretty much. I mean, I don't know about their stadium, how much they pack it, but I can almost guarantee you they've had a lot more hype. The school has brought in probably a boatload more money, if I had to guess, or a large part due to those two players committing to the school. But
let me ask you, I mean, if it was just look, when teams win, people flock, right? When the Gators were in their heyday, you couldn't get a seat in the Swamp. Now, when they're not doing as well, it's the games probably aren't as sold out. There is a lot of, like, I understand, right? Sanders is getting paid and he should get paid. He's helping the school make money, but where do you draw the line? How much of it, is because of Sanders? And I'm guessing the school doesn't give him money, right? It's just the outside sponsors that give him money.
Yeah. So as of right now, like I said, it's being discussed, but the schools are not compensating the players directly. They might get stipends. That depends on the school. But as of right now, it is not a situation where the schools are giving a salary to the players as if they're employees. He's not getting paid by the school, but he's getting paid by these brands. And you ask about a cutoff, and the question is, I don't think that that's for us to determine. I think if brands are willing to pay that kind of money, then Shedeur Sanders, for what he does, he's an influencer. I know he's a student athlete first, but at the end of the day, he's an influencer. He's made a brand for himself, both through his personality and his playing abilities. And how I see it, I'm not going to speak for Brett here or anyone else, but how I see it is that it's the same thing if I were to go on TikTok myself and build a brand making funny videos and brands wanted to work with me. The only difference is that he is now a college athlete. So for me, I think that I'm not someone, and I don't think that schools or the NCAA is an organization where they should limit how much money someone can make on their NIL. I think that if brands are willing to work with them, then it's up for the players to make those decisions for themselves, how much they want to make, and for the brands, how much they want to give them. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some systems in check while the player is currently playing at the university, but as I think it's their decision, and it's not the NCAA's call to limit it.
And I pretty much completely agree. If you look at Livy Dunn, who you mentioned earlier, extremely successful influencer, built her own brand. I don't understand, and as everyone would assume, and this is no disrespect to the sport in any way, gymnastics does not bring in as much traction, as much fans, packed out stadium. I could be wrong. Maybe somewhere it does, but in general, it doesn't bring fans traction to a stadium like other sports do. So I think you have to credit someone like Livy Dunn for building her brand, being an influencer, marketing herself to be that way. I think it would be selling her short if she was not eligible to make as much money as she does.
Correct. You're 100% correct. There's nothing, and that's where I think the House ruling and everything else is going to have to, figure out where's the balance, right? If Livy Dunn can do a non-top grossing sport in general and make $1 million a year, good for her. Like he should be allowed to make $2 million, $7 million. Who cares? But because you put on a football helmet, and that's what draws the crowds, you shouldn't automatically be, you need to be making more money, right? It's all about the brand. Now, NIL doesn't only apply to college athletes, right? Name, image, and likeness, that applies across the board. That applies to professional athletes. Here in Florida now, you can also work with high school athletes. So there's nothing stopping it. So again, like there used to be, I'm going to show my age, but there was a running back called Ironhead Hayward, I think was his name. And he was a running back, and he did something for like Dial soap, right? Or one of those. People wanted to hear about him. They wanted to see him. They wanted to do that. Most of the commercials that we see on TV, are the quarterbacks, are the home run hitter, are the ones that that score, the point guards. It's usually not the center, usually not the offensive lineman. Why? Because people want to see, what Joe Burrow has to say, and they want to see what Richardson from the Colts, what he has to say. Like these are all the things. So it's basically what we as the public consume, right? So right now the public is consuming the Cavallari, the twins from UM, who they're now back at UM. They're consuming Livy Dunn. They're consuming her boyfriend, who's the pitcher for the Pirates. And, some of these new quarterbacks that just got drafted, between Williams and Bo Nix. And as all of these people get more playing time, they're going to get more sponsorships. I mean, remember Baker Mayfield? He had a whole thing about I think it was Allstate commercials, and Mahomes, State Farm. That's because we as consumers consume what these athletes are putting out there. And that's what it's all about. So if you're working, with an athlete on any level, and let's just say lacrosse, because it's true and dear to my heart, all of a sudden lacrosse was the only sport that was being played live during COVID. All of a sudden you saw Paul Rabel, Matt Rambo, and Casey Powell and a couple others. All of a sudden they were doing stuff. Great. And they should get paid. And it doesn't matter what level of their career they're at. I'm sure everybody's heard of Baby Gronk.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's in sports, but people are following him. And I'm sure if he's wearing a Polo brand shirt, Polo's gave him the shirt or something. And that's what it's all about. So if a brand feels that somebody is doing something to help their brand and they're willing to do it, why shouldn't they get paid? And I don't care if you're 1 year old or 100 years old. Someone's going to pay for you to do it, then do it. And I think that's what the NIL is heading to. But I also think that you need to make sure that you're getting the best talent, the best students, the best people. And it's not just, hey, go to the University of Florida, because not only will you go for free, but we're going to buy you a brand new electric Hummer. Like, no. But if GM says to the player, hey, we want you to come around, who's to say no?
Yep, 100%. I agree. I think that they definitely have that right to make that kind of money if the brands are looking to do it. And I think that you mentioned an interesting point about making sure that they're not getting too much, right? They're getting compensated already. They're still student athletes at that point, and I think that's why there needs to be some sort of I don't know if I'd call it legislation, but kind of regulations at least on the NCAA's part, or a plan in place, right? When this eventually became legal and NIL became a huge thing, there's not really a plan in place. No one really knows how it's going or what's going to happen. And I think that there needs to be some sort of system. And I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and tell you this is the way to do it. I don't know. I'm not qualified for that, and I'm not going to pretend to be. But there does need to be someone who is qualified to go ahead and figure out a way that can help the student athletes be student athletes and play the best of their ability and get a degree, but also allow them to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness, because in my opinion, that is their right. I think that they have the full right to go ahead and do that, but there needs to be a way that that they can while still doing what they need to do. And that's kind of where we got this motivation to start this, is to help them stay on track while also managing their NIL.
And the compliance officers at the school, they're usually pretty good. They know this stuff. I know that I sat through a session with a compliance officer at Syracuse last summer, and I went up to him afterwards, and I'm like, look, I teach sports law, and I would love to have you come teach a class because you knew it all. Like, this guy was on top of it all. So those compliance directors at the school, they know their stuff. So that's where you should start, right, with them. Make sure it's good to go. Make sure you're not getting taken advantage of, because that's the thing that we also need to keep in mind, right? Most of these athletes are somewhere between 15 and 20, 25. They don't know. They don't have, that life experience. They don't have, they have every aunt, uncle, cousin, brother, sister whispering in their ear, do this, do this, do this. But at the end of the day, they still need somebody to bounce it off of. They need, an advisor, a financial advisor, an attorney, a banker, an agent, whatever it is, someone that you can trust, and make sure it's not a family member, because that's usually not the way to go. But trust these people to look out for your, meaning the athlete's, best interest. And you need to make sure that you stay in line with all NCAA eligibility, because you don't want to screw up, your rest of your playing because someone gave you a soda for free and you weren't allowed to take it, or they gave you a t-shirt and it's Under Armour and you're specifically licensed by Nike, so that's where you get. So how can athletes and students and parents and everybody else that they're interested in hearing more, potentially picking your brain, what's the best way for them to reach out to you guys?
Sure. So
first of all, what's the name of your company?
Sure. So we're NextUp Sports Group. You guys can find us on Instagram. That's nextup.sportsgroup on Instagram. I think, are you going to provide our numbers, or should we say them now in our contact information?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if it's going to run on the bottom, but email is usually the best way. You could go to nextupsportsgroup.com. That's one way of doing it. And for those that are listening, it's nextupsportsgroup.com. For those that are watching, it's across the screen at the bottom. Go to the site, and there's a Contact Us tab, and go that way and contact them. And figure out what's going on, and go ahead, start making money, right? Because that's what this is all about.
100%.
Play hard, stay within the rules, make some money. And like my son says, you know what? He's going to college for 4 years to set himself up for the next 40. And that's what this is all about. And you need somebody on your team who is willing to think the same way. Not the quick fix, not the quick dollar, not here's $50 so that I can make, my $10 off of you. No. Let's get you in the right deal. Let's get you set up for life. Let's get you invested. Let's get you, going down the right path. And that's what this is all about. Make money, but do it the right way and go down the best path.
100%.
So what sports are you all focusing on? I know for a fact you're working with lacrosse. I know that you're working with you're trying to work with football. You are working with football. What other sports? If someone's listening, they're like, nah, that they don't want a sport like me. What was the thing? Hockey, or the one where they do the slide in the Olympics and they do it. You know which one I'm talking about.
Curling, yeah.
Something that we take pride on is that everybody has value. It doesn't matter D1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter what sport you're in. we definitely think that everybody has value. And if you believe that in yourself, you should definitely contact us through the website listed right there. I don't want to get into too specific details of conversations we've had, but just to put it out there, any
general, like football and lacrosse, soccer.
Yes. We've had conversations with every sport. We think, like you said, that there's value in everything. A lot of the issue with NIL right now is that people who aren't the top football player, the quarterback of Ohio State or Michigan, don't think they have value. And that's just not true. That the NIL space is opening. It's new. It's young. It's ready to explode. And every athlete that is in college, even if they don't think they have value, you do. You should contact us, like Brett said. We will help you. And I think that it's time for athletes that don't think they do to go ahead and start capitalizing on their NIL.
Right, and you could come up with a niche market, right? I mean, look, the starting quarterback at BYU, he's got a niche market. He knows what his niche market is. We know what his niche market is. Contact us. We'll talk to you about that niche market. No problem. But at the same time, just everybody's got value. Everybody's got value. You want to be a large lineman. And I think there's a guy in Florida who's like 360 or 400 pounds.
Yeah.
Well,
400,
his value could be custom-made seats in a car for a big guy like that. My son wears a size 13 or 14 shoe. The value for him is companies that make. So everybody has a value. Everybody has something. So we're winding down, and we got your contact information there. So awesome. I usually save my hardest question for last, and that's what I'm going to do here. So your favorite sports movie and why? And we're going to start with Brett.
We might start with Garrett. I would have to
we're going to start with Garrett.
All right, my favorite sports movie. Got to go with Miracle, I think. I just have great memories of watching with my dad growing up. Just good underdog story. I love a good underdog, especially when the U.S. is in there. It's just a well-made movie. I mean, it always hits you in the feels and always gets you pumped up right before the Olympics.
Got it. Okay, got it. What about you, Brett?
I'm going to go Draft Day. Not that old. I think it's 10 years old, something like that.
Ooh, yeah. I'm going to go with Death Race.
Okay.
Hey, it's a sport. They were hunting them down, and all that.
I'll take it. I mean,
I also like The Water Boy.
Okay, that's a good one.
Got to go with an Adam Sandler type movie. So for all the listeners that are out there, you want to learn more about NIL, contact Brett and Garrett. It is nextupsportsgroup.com. Follow them on Instagram, like them on Instagram, see all the stuff that they have. You have an idea, you have a contact, you want to know more about NIL, you want to get yourself some money to help defray college, you want to make some money and do it as a professional, contact these guys. They know what they're doing. They have experience, and they have an attorney who is back there helping them out. And making sure that they stay in the right. I want to thank both of you so much for coming here today. Such a pleasure. NextUpSportsGroup.com for everybody that's out there trick-or-treating. Be safe. Have a happy and a healthy one. And go Gators. Go Gators.
Gators.
Big game this weekend against the Bulldogs. So
yep. We'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there.
They need all the help they can get. So let's do this, guys. Go ahead. Cheer them on.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jason.
CC and the team and the GoingBoldMedia.com. Thank you so much. GoingSoloMedia.com. WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio. Thank you. And we'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Have a great Halloween.
Thank you, Jason.